What is up, everybody? Hoang Zero here, and today we are with the EX3 tier list. I'm joined today once again by my partner Zero.
Hey, what's up?
And so for this tier list, we will be covering all of the new decks as well as the old decks, going it forward into the EX3 format, which is actually in a week now. Impressive, really surprising. But nonetheless, there is a lot of changes that happened. So prior to the recent ban list and everything, we kind of had an idea of what was to be expected, right? Obviously, things changed when going from Japan to English, but now the entire format's on its flipped upside down on its head, right? Because of that ban list, Crossheart leaving the meta is one of the biggest things going forward, as well as Alphamon getting hit, since both decks were very, very strong. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it was quite interesting because based on the first tournament result, the DC1 event, Crossheart was not dominating the same way that we were, like if you were to look at Japanese result, right, you would think it would be like the most dominating deck of that tournament. It had a good rep in top 16, but by no means was it, outshining every other deck.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of the tournament results that we've seen across, the different various regions. We've seen a lot of BT9 decks having success. BT9 still seems to be the deck to play. Melga, Alpha, Grandis, even Armors, right, are all seeing a solid amount of success. So I think it's really interesting to think about that, given the fact that, like you said, Crossheart was so dominant in the Japanese format, and going forward to EX3, I think that will also shake up a lot of things, not only just the difference in player style, I guess if you will say that, but just the ban list difference. Like, for example, Hydra Bloom was one of the best decks in the Japanese format, and now, I mean, who's to say the deck won't flop in English, right?
That's pretty good.
I think it's really good too. We also thought Crossheart was really good, and here we are, right? So it'll probably see like a good amount of representation and whatnot on Top Cut, but nonetheless, getting straight into it. Security control. Security control has existed in the game for a long, long, long time now, since almost the beginning of the game. Security control is constantly going through different stages of evolution. We've seen so many different variations. Currently, we are on the purple Mimi version of security control, right? Where you're spamming your Hell Scythes for very cheap, getting out your Magna Angemons, and then you're going from there. Venusmon was a huge addition to the security control deck, giving you an answer to decks such as the Metal Garurumon. But in EX3, I don't think security control got anything significant, did it?
I don't think so. It doesn't seem like any of the new option really boosted that much.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the biggest cope you could say is like maybe 4 dragon security control, but again, that's just like pure cope, like hard card cope. But in terms of security controls matchups, the Crossheart no longer being in the format is actually a buff to security control, because now you no longer have to optimize for that matchup. Alphamon leaving the meta is also a really huge buff to security control, because no longer do you have a deck that will primarily just spam Congo Breath of the Gods at you, as well as Dora Greymon protection and such. So that's really great and dandy. Those are really good buffs to security control. But looking at the different EX3 decks we see, which of these decks have a good matchup with security control, and which of them have a bad matchup with security control, right?
Imperial.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Imperial just smashes you, right? Because Imperial literally says none of your security activates.
Yeah, we can talk more about Imperial when we get there, but the issue with Imperial is seeing all your pieces and being kind of slow.
Yeah.
But if you play Imperial into security control, I think it's going to be really difficult for you to lose.
Right.
Because they just give you all the time in the world to make your play, and then you just smack them and burn their entire security away.
Yeah, so I think given the dynamic of how everything is turning out, with these changes, I think security control is a firm 1.5. To start us off on this tier list, I think it's a very strong deck. It's very flexible. It can make a lot of adaptations. We've seen with the Venusmon, we've seen a lot of aggro versions of security control, right? Just playing off of that Hell Scythe Magna Angemon. And there's just a lot of different ways you can build it. I'm sure somebody's going to come up with another way that you can play around stuff. Like Grand de Sol, for example, was another adaptation security control I'd made. And Grand de Sol would be a really strong card going into the EX3 format, right? Because it's one of the few forms of removal that actually will get rid of Examon before Examon is able to save himself. So I do think it is a firm 1.5. Going up next, we do have Bellstar, or Three Musketeers, if you will. This deck is a huge fan favorite. It's a very unique play style where you just, we want to get as many of those options in your trash as possible, as long as the Three Musketeers. Bellstar does get a buff with Crossheart leaving the meta, because one of the biggest things was if you pop a Crossheart Digimon, then it was just going to go ahead and just put itself under a tamer. That no longer is a thing you have to worry about. But I don't know. I don't think it got any significant buffs outside of that. BT9 decks can still give you a fair run for your money if you don't hit the correct security bomb. I would imagine Blue Flare is actually a very difficult matchup, and Blue Flare gets a very significant buff in this format. Examon is probably a difficult matchup given the fact that most of your removal will not hit it. You will be forced to use the Kokaida's Breath, and is Grandosoul 7 cost or 8 cost? I actually don't remember.
Grandosoul is 8 cost with reduction.
It's I just wanted to double check. Yeah, okay, so it's 8 cost, so you can't you don't have access to Grandosoul either. And then versus Bloom Lord, I don't think your matchup is terrible, but I don't know if it's outstandingly good either, right?
If you get lucky with security, it's okay, but it could be really rough if they get going fast and your security doesn't kill their stack right away.
Right.
It might become an issue where you just get run over by Bloom before you can do your setup, because you can be a little bit on the slow side. Also, I think the most prominent thing is the first place deck from DC1 is a new variation of armor that we haven't seen before, which is armor with Just-One GX top end evolving over Magna X to pressure for, like 3 to 4 security check.
Yeah, it's fundamentally Blitz Omni, right? It's a Blitz Omni that actually works with armors really well. And armors being one of your hardest matchups, I find it hard to give Bellstar anything higher than tier 2. Even at this point, the more we talk about it, I'm kind of finding it harder to find reason to even put it in tier 2. I kind of want to put it in tier 3. What do you think?
We could be wrong, but yeah. Also, this deck has not been getting result.
No, it has not.
Yeah, every time I try to give this deck the benefit of the doubt, it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, sorry, Bellstar. I just don't see the merit. Imperial Dramon is a huge fan favorite, and if you people have been paying attention, BT12 Imperial looks pretty fun and pretty strong.
Well, Imperial. We have another Imperial now.
Yeah. But Blue-Green Imperial, I think, is a tier 2 deck. And the reason why I say that is because your matchups across the board do get a little bit more difficult, I would say. One of the biggest things that does hurt you is Bloom Lord, right? Bloom Lord being part of the meta is something that can be very, very annoying just because of Hydramon's presence. Hydramon being able to deter a lot of your aggression. Not only that, but you have decks like the Hina Links with their Metallic Dramon going to make it so you can't Jogress with your Sting XP. Both of them would have to be tapped, and that just doesn't sound very great, given the fact that you're most likely going to slam the Stingmon and then Jogress on that same turn. And with Metallic Dramon's effect, you will not be able to do that. And I don't know exactly how good your Examon matchup is. You can Megadeth Examon, and that's a really great answer. So maybe your Examon matchup's not terrible. What do you think?
Do you think this deck get any sort of improvement from EX3? Because the new Examon support does say Dramon on them.
I don't.
So they will work with Imperial Dramon, and then you do have like Avalon's Gate will work with Imperial with like a fighter mode and give you an extra swing.
Does Avalon's Gate say Dramon? I thought it specified.
No, Avalon's Gate is just one of your Digimon.
I see.
Yeah. So if you have Exa, it activates both effect, right? But you can still get like an extra unsuspend off your fighter mode. Or you can get like a piercing check with fighter mode.
Right. Okay. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think because you get a little bit of support here and there, and it's not like your matchups are just flat out terrible. You do have some merits like the Megadeth spam, as well as Gigadeath becoming like a really good card, unironically. And we'll talk about that when we get to the certain section. But I think because of like a few reasons here and there, I do think Imperial is most likely a tier 2 deck. It still has a lot of merits. Your high roll is still pretty solid. You have a lot of tempo plays. But I just do not foresee it entering the realm of tier 1 or tier 1.5 anytime soon.
Yeah.
However, Mastemon is pretty good, actually. One of the cards that people laughed about a lot prior to these recent sets is Ordinamon or Ordinmon. That card is essentially a board wipe, right? And
Yep.
a lot of the decks, they would go tall, and when you go tall, Ordinamon loses a lot of value because there's not a lot of things that are popping. Going forward into EX3 format, one of the decks that is predicted to be insanely powerful is the Bloom Lord. And Ordinamon is very, very strong into that Bloom Lord matchup because you will be able to nuke their board. Granted, Pomumon is a huge deterrent. I think without decks like, or not decks, but rather without cards like Pomumon in the meta, I think you can make it a genuine argument that Mastemon could be within the realm of tier 1. But I think because of cards like Pomumon existing, and just because there is your floor isn't exactly the highest. You need to have a little bit of luck.
One thing of note, though, I don't know if you've seen it, but Maste has saw a new build recently that play red base.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, you do use like the Gilmon egg and then the Digimon that draws, and then you run Gilmon bottom end. So you have draw power, and then you also run the EX3 Gilmon, which then allow you to have a way to remove Pomomon.
I feel like that build is a lot better in BT11 because of Mirai being a permanent yellow sorcery, Sunrise Buster. But I do think that build is actually potentially really interesting and something to explore within the EX3 format.
Sunrise did get hit.
Oh, so, that's right. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But there might be something there with still having like Gilmon as your bottom end. I think Megiddo Flame could be an interesting option because it gives you a cheap way to remove a level 6.
Oh, and it is a new card, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on the screen just for everyone watching. But Megiddo Flame is 4 cost, delete one of your opponents level 4 or lower. By deleting one of your Digimon, you may delete one of your opponents 6 or lower instead. Security effect, you may play a Guilmon from trash for free.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah. I don't know if I would put Maste tier 1 though. It does get some changes. I think Maste is solidly probably 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, I can see it even within the realm of 1.5. It's one of the few decks that also has an out to Examon, being the Chaos Degradation, right? So that is a pretty big plus to it.
Yeah, Pomo just makes your matchup so rough though. I think both Bloom and Grandis are potentially difficult matchup for you. Right,
I do agree. Okay, Blackboard Greymon. This is unironically a huge fan favorite within the community. One I did not expect to be so popular, but Blackboard Greymon is a really interesting case. It's seen its fair amount of tops here and there, which is great and everything for it. I'm happy for it. But the biggest thing about it is with Crossheart and Alphamon leaving the meta, you lose 2 of your good matchups, right? So you lose 2 of your good matchups, and then you look at what new decks are entering the fray, and then you ask yourself, okay, how do I do into that? Bloom Hydra, I don't think you beat Bloom Hydra. I think you get bot decked and then you're sad. Hina Lynx, you can't digivolve into Black Warg, so then you're unable to actually pop their stuff. And Examon, how do you ever 1v1 Examon, right? I mean, I guess you could de-digivolve with Gaiomon or Metal Greymon, right? I guess.
Yeah, not to mention Jesmon is a pretty rough matchup for you.
Yeah, Jesmon is also a rough matchup. But yeah, just in general, I think having all of these new matchups that are kind of difficult for you entering the fray, it just kind of makes it hard for me to want to put Black War Greymon in tier 1.5, at least until BT11, right? Where then it's like arguably the best deck in the format.
Terror of the meta.
Actual terror. But I think as of right now, in its EX3 iteration, I do think it's a tier 2 deck.
Probably on the higher end of tier 2 deck. Yeah. I can see this topping event still randomly.
Yeah, I think having the access to D-Digivolve, is really nice. I think that's a really great tool that the deck does have. But in general, introducing a lot of these new matchups that are kind of difficult for you makes it hard for me to put this into 1.5.
Bloom Lore is also very fast now.
Yeah.
So I think decks that are a little bit more slower and can't control board as early will get punished because of it.
Well, technically, Bloom Lord's speed didn't change, because technically the speed is the same. What changed is the tools that you had in the toolbox, right? Being accessibility, more access to suspending your opponents as well as the Hydra bot deck, right?
Well, being able to go fast and then also remove body on
Yeah,
top
yeah.
of having piercing make
Wait. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's the new access to opponent interaction, right?
Yeah, like before you didn't have access to playing EX3 Pomu off of Agitar evolving, tapping the Pomu to tap your opponent and then
Yeah.
swing over with Bloomlore for
Right.
piercing, right?
Yeah, it's so strong.
Yeah, like you can't like you really have a lot of issue contesting board with them now because they can remove a lot of bodies from various just from almost zero setup, right?
Right.
Like and most decks don't have attack protection.
All right.
Really, only Melga.
Yeah. All right. So Alphamon losing Doru Greymon is actually some real feels bad kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's tier 3.
Yeah. There's just there's no reason to play this deck anymore, right? Like
It, you know, it got a random result in Japan, and I don't know how.
okay, was it a best of one? Was it a 2-man local? Like
I don't know. I thought we have to look at it again, but I saw a list at top.
it won an Omnimon in Japan.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't it win an Omnimon?
It did win an. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did. I mean, like,
Yeah,
Oryukin is still a really strong card. I just not having Security Plus seems kind of neg.
Yeah, you can't even make like an unkillable body anymore.
Right. Yeah. I think I don't know. I just don't genuinely see the merit to playing Oryukin in this format. It's just not really.
Yeah,
But coming up next,
wait for Alpha to win the first
if
EX3
yeah,
event.
if Alphamon wins the first EX3 event with the ban list in effect, like I guess screw it, right? But coming up next, we do have what is arguably the best deck in the current format, being BT10, as well as possibly in EX3. You want to take care of this one, Melga Enthusiast?
Yeah, that's amazing. I was to say, you play Melga, you know how really smooth this deck feel.
Right.
It's probably the best version of the X antibody deck in terms of abusing all of the advantage, right? Like you're being able to swing multiple times, abusing the X antibody option on attack effect because it's not once per turn. You're basically using Cool Boy almost every single turn compared to some other decks that may activate Cool Boy every other turn. You're digging so fast. Like sometimes you're moving out a Gabumon, and like just think it. You have a Cool Boy in play. You're moving out a Gabumon. You evolve Gabu X. That's a game memory +2 off the evolve, and then the Cool Boy, and then you get the search of the Gabumon. So that's draw 3 cards. And then on top of that, now you can go into Promo Garurumon and then Garuru X, and then draw another card off the swing. The deck is just really powerful, and then now you also have access to Omnimon X from BT10, and that just gives you the ability to play around deck with really strong security. Oftentimes, to a lot of decks, they usually just have like one really strong security, unless they get very lucky, right? So having access to Omni X means sometimes you just go directly into Omni X, burn away that one really scary security that they happen to have in stack, and then just go to town. And then you have a 16k body that's really hard to remove after already drawing a bunch of cards, getting advantage, and then chipping your opponent. And on top of that, the deck just has a ton of bounces, and it just play around almost everything really well. I just don't see what like just I don't see any deck where this deck is just really bad into currently. I guess maybe if like Jespon get a perfect hand, you can't answer them, but other than that, you're still on average faster than most decks. So, what are your thoughts?
I like the record to show. When I played Jesmon versus Zero's Melga, I won the set. Just saying. But no, I do agree. I think this deck is absolutely phenomenal. It has so many tools. It has so much memory manipulation as well as draw power. I see no reason for it to not guarantee its slot in the tier 1 category, as well as just being in the running for best deck at the format. Yeah, I don't know. There's not much else to say. I feel like you covered mostly everything.
Yep.
All right, War Greymon Enthusiast, you ready?
Sure. This is tier 2, in my opinion.
Okay.
I want to put okay. So in theory, this deck should be really good, right? Like War Greymon is a fair favorite Digimon. Get a ton of support. Get cards like every other set, and it should in theory have the same speed as Melga. but it really doesn't, because this suffer from a lot of single deck syndrome. Single stack deck syndrome, where like you have more difficulty than Melga moving out early because your lower level stack just doesn't swing as well, right? You don't get like a draw advantage up Pomo Melga, and then you also don't have like DP protection. So oftentimes the first time you're swinging is maybe when you evolve into like a Metal Greymon X, for example, right? And on average, it's just a little bit slower. And I don't know, just overall, the deck just it should be good, but it hasn't gotten a result, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, I do agree. You have like so many tools, right? You have removal, you have security pressure. You almost have the same consistency as Melga, but you really don't. TBH. Lack of promo Garurumon. Davis existing, I guess, is wow. But yeah,
Your other issue also got fixed, right? Because the issue before is sometimes you can't finish the game, but now you have
Omni X, right?
Yeah, you can go into Blitz Omni and then on the swing evolve to into Omni X, burn the security and lethal from 1.
Yeah.
So like you can move out with Wargreymon X, swing for 4 checks, and then do that play. But it's probably just very piece reliant still to do that whole combo. And on average, the deck just kind of falls apart a lot.
Unless you're Ying and you open up the 10 card combo by turn 3, right?
I beat him with Melga, so
Okay. You know, the same way I beat you with Jessamon, so I digress.
Exactly.
I digress. Magna X. This is actually, I think, really interesting, right? Because it recently won. Was it DC1, right?
Yep.
It recently won DC1 using the Jessamon GX. Which, by the way, I don't know why people are hating on that card as much as they did prior to this. Jessamon GX is busted. Like, it reads like an anime protagonist card. Like, I don't know. But nonetheless, I'll let you take this one. You and your BT9.
I mean, what is that to say? Armor has been... Armor feels like a deck that we kind of overhyped, didn't we? Like, we said, I believe, in our BT9 tier list.
We put it in 1.5.
Yeah, but we put Magna X as one of the best cards in the set, and it just kind of didn't perform that well.
No, it did not.
Overall.
It did not.
I think the issue Armor ran into was that you kind of had... You're very... low to the ground deck, right? Very fast, very aggro, almost like Rookie Rush in that sense. But your scaling... You weren't quite as fast as Rookie Rush sometimes, and your scaling was also off. And sometimes you're also quite piece reliant. And I think GX fixed that scaling issue. So I think that's why this deck was able to win an event. We need to see if that win was a fluke.
Or if it can be consistently replicated, right?
Yeah. Because it was also... I mean, it won the event. It was also the only Armor deck in the top 16. But at the same time, you wouldn't think... It's a fairly new invention. So it's not like people exactly caught on yet. Maybe we just start seeing a bunch of Armor everywhere in the next event.
So now I have a question, right? How does this deck do with Cross Heart and Alpha being hit, as well as the new EX3 decks coming into the format? Because I look at this, right, and the first thing I see is, 1, Blue Flare. Sorai will absolutely body you, right?
Right.
Bloom Lord, Hydra bot decks. Metallic Dramon, you literally cannot Digivolve. You cannot play out your free VMons. And you never beat Examon 1-on-1.
Well, technically, you can swing Armor Perch.
Yeah.
And then evolve into Magna if they try to block you. And then you can, if your Magna's big enough, you can swing over the Metallic.
What if they just don't block, though?
Then you get damaged.
And then what happens?
Go into GX, I don't know.
Okay, but... You can't go into GX because you can't evo. Oh, or no, because you're on Magna, right? So you have to go into Magna X. So you have to. You have to.
Yeah, you just go into Magna X. Yeah, just go into Magna X first, and then you swing. They don't block, and then you go into GX, tug a Magna. Oh wait, does GX have to tug a level 6?
It has to tuck a Royal Knight. It can tuck regular Magna, yeah.
Yeah. Magnus, a regular Magnus level 9. I just forgot if
No, it looks
it
at
has to be.
it looks at play cost. It's 13 or less.
Okay, so you can definitely tuck mana and just untap and swing, huh?
All right, maybe Hina Link's matchup is salvageable. Anyway, no, Blue Flare, Hydra, and Exa, they sound awful to play into. TBH, right?
Yeah, I think you do. Probably in EX3, you probably have more bad matchups compared
So
to right now.
so, given the fact that this deck has very what's the word I'm looking for?
Polarizing. Yeah, some very polarizing matchups.
Yeah, the matchup spread is kind of whack, and the amount of tops this deck has is very few. Where do you think is appropriate for this deck, if you had to say?
Honestly, I think it's probably 2-2.
Okay, that's what I was thinking as well. But I didn't want to get yelled at, so I needed to wait until you said it first, then I could like bandwagon on that.
Well, I would never yell at you.
Okay, whatever you say. Anywho, next BT9 deck, Mr. BT9 enthusiast, will you please?
Greatest think solid 1.5.
Okay, I agree. Yes.
Is that a lot to say? I mean, it's the same OTK deck. You have access to Pomu, so Pomu is the deck has a lot of room, so you can just play multiple floodgates, right? Which naturally help you into a bunch of different matchups.
I think.
Like Pomu help you into Bloom, Pomu help you into like Mass Day.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have like Memory Blocker for like matchup like loops and stuff like that.
I
I mean,
think
I don't think there's much to say. Like on average, this deck is better now.
I
Uh,
I would say I think it would be a tier 1 deck if not for Examon, right? I think Examon existing in the format is pretty rough for Grandis because your matchup into X is actually pretty abysmal, right?
on average, you probably still lose to Melga.
Yeah, I agree. You also probably still lose to Melga as well. So given the fact that both of those decks are in the meta, and Examon is probably out of the gate going to be very popular just because it is like one of those fan favorite Digimon. It's hard for me to put Grandis in tier 1.
Yeah, I agree.
Alright, and then your favorite Digimon, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So I play Gallant every format whenever possible, and the deck has always historically been pretty mediocre. I think EX3 is the set where Gallant finally rise to competitive level. I think it's solid 1.5, and there's a lot of potential for this deck to see result this meta. Reasoning is because I think your matchup spread into the meta is a lot better, right? Alpha is gone, so deletion protection is gone. Um, Crossfire is gone, so on average you don't have to deal with save anymore. Save is actually quite annoying because you don't get those kind of trash, so you don't build up their trash, so you can't really burn them. But now you also have like decks like Bloomlore in the meta, and I think your matchup into Bloomlore is fantastic because Bloomlore just like to spam body on board, and whenever you as the Gallant player see bodies on board, your eyes just lit up because that's just scream free memory. I don't know about you, but like going to Wargrowl X and getting like 4 memory off that play is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Gallant is a lot better in the EX3 format with all the new support, as well as just the matchup spread in general, right? It's just, like you just mentioned, a lot of decks that are going to be popular in EX3, Gallimon does surprisingly well into. So I think, see, I think this is 1.5. I feel like you're going to stab me otherwise unless I put it in tier 1. Where are you going to put this one?
I think it's 1.5.
Okay.
I don't think it's tier 1 because it still has red deck issue. You sometimes you just don't see your full stack, and it is a deck that's much more reliant on seeing the full stack compared to something like Melga.
Yeah.
I think if you see your full line, your Melga matchup is actually pretty solid because you can kind of keep up with them in speed unless they just open the nuts, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the deck is very solid now.
Okay. And then last BT9 deck on the list, if you will take this away.
I honestly don't know. I don't know how I feel about Ofani right now. I want to say this deck is as good as Maste, but is that true? You have to deal with stuff like, again, the Pomu keep coming back, so you have to deal with stuff like Pomu. And then on top of that, you kind of get run over by these BT9 decks, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think the biggest thing though, right, is Ofani feels like a more tempo eccentric version of Mastemon, where you're not looking for that big joggers play. You're looking to just accrue value over time, and so I think you are a bit faster to the ground than Mastemon is. Mastemon is having a much higher ceiling than Ofani Loop does, where your Maste plays feel fantastic when you get them off, but like you have to get to there, right? So I guess the question is the trade-off of having a more tempo-centric playstyle as well as just having more to-the-ground levels of play, is that worth it over Mostemon's payout, right? Looking at the format, Bloomlord is, again, one of your hardest matchups.
Melga bounces you.
Yeah, Melga bounces you.
Blue Flare stuns you, so you can't really get value.
Yeah, I imagine Blue Flare is a terrible matchup, right? But these are also issues that Mastemon would suffer from, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the biggest thing though is Mastemon's payout is it's insane top end, right? In the top end, when you get to that payout, is why it feels like a valid 1.5 deck. With a Fawny Loop, you don't have that same. You can't replicate that same top end, at least not as well. It's
But
not. Mm-hmm.
if you can spread more into yellow and play Venus, does that help your matchup spread more? Because Venus is a very powerful card.
Right, Venus is very strong. I think Venus is very effective in a lot of the BT9 decks. I don't think Venus is very effective into a lot of the EX3 decks.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think you do as a deck you do have more room to flex than Maste because Maste top end is kind of much more rigid.
Right. I don't know. This is a weird one. This is genuinely a really weird one. I think this is probably the.
I think I'm leaning on it being worse than Maste,
but
until somebody find a solution. Maybe Venus alone is good enough.
Yeah, I mean, like it. I don't think it had any significant results in in BT10 yet. I don't think it has. And it wasn't exactly taking the format by storm in BT9 either, right? I feel like a lot of the BT9 results, A, was not a lot, and B, was also towards the tail end of the format where a lot of people were just starting to get bored of shit like Melga. So I can kind of see it being stuck in between limbo of tier 2 as well as 1.5.
I think tier 2 is fine.
Yeah, I think the lack of ceiling probably is what separates it from the Mastermon deck, but by no means do I think it's a bad deck. I think this is still a very solid deck.
Fair.
Yeah. Jesmon.
Take it away.
Yeah, Jesmon is in BT10 specifically was in contention for best deck in the format, and the reason why I say that is because Crossheart did not perform as well as expected. So rip Minerva. But Jesmon has a very solid matchup into what the meta turned out to be. Right, it has a very solid matchup into a lot of your BT9 decks that were popular. Outside of Grandis, that matchup is pretty Grandis favorite, TBH. But you have into Melga, if you got into your GX combo, Melga had actually 0 outs to you. They literally could not beat you if you got into GX combo. It was GG go next. And versus decks like, actually, I say it out loud right now, but versus Magna, you never get your piercing off. Versus Alpha, you lose to Alpha. I guess you beat Warg, but does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? Not really. Yeah, either way, GX board is actually insane. It reads like an anime card. If you get to the GX board, you're probably winning the game in most situations. If you dodged Blue Flare, you were generally in the clear. The issue now then becomes Pomumon existing in a much more prevalent sense, being that Hydramon is predicted to be one of the best decks in the format. If Hydramon starts popping up its head everywhere alongside its BFF Pomumon, Jesmon feels really bad. Jesmon also... Does it beat Exa?
It has to get on board before Exa.
Right, but if you never get the opportunity to 1v1. I mean, if you 1v1 Examon without the proper setup, I feel like it's just a neg, right?
If you have started that Jesmon and you move out, can you out?
So starter deck Jesmon, swing CL, CL
It's
Evo.
16. With Source, you can be bigger enough to where Exa can't block you.
Right.
Because if you swing and you play CL to evolve, or
Huh.
you swing and you play um
I mean, it has to be CL to evolve, right?
and the other system on that give you 2K.
Yeah, but then you have
So
to get.
you become 16, and then if you have an egg, you're like 17. That's enough to swing over Exa.
17 trades with Exa, and then Exa then decoys out.
Then don't can you just solve that by having uh the level 4 the
All right, I
level
mean, I
the
guess
new level.
you could have Bauhuck or Huckmon to give you a +1 KDP.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, you don't get rid of the Exa stack, and they potentially clap you back on the following turn. Um, I would have to test that matchup more in depth, but I do think the biggest deterrence to Jesmon is the fact that Bloom Lord is so big, as well as Blue Flare. I think Blue Flare becoming one of the stronger decks of the format, I think really hurts the deck. I want to put Jesmon in 1.5, but I think realistically it's probably tier 2, just because of Bloom Lord and Blue Flare coming into Rise, as well as Melga still being such a strong deck, and you do have to see a lot of the stars aligning to beat Melga on average. So I think realistically it's tier 2. What do you think?
I agree. I think the issue is Bloomlord, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
We keep going back to it, but I think Bloomlord is gonna dictate the speed with meta, being a very fast deck, right?
Right.
So you have both Melga and Bloomlord being very fast deck. And the issue with Jesmon is that yes, your board is really good, but sometimes you don't get there fast enough.
Yeah. Okay. Cross 4 or Cross Art in general. This is tier 3. This deck sucks now. There's no reason to play this deck until Cross 7. I think people that are coping Shotmon King are kind of wild. Like I guess the idea is like grab back your cross 4, but you're grabbing back cross 4 for 3, and then you probably don't have enough memory to even go into the cross 4. So
It's a lot slower.
it's very slow. And not being able to consistently loop the cross 4 is just such a like a neg for the deck. I don't see why you would play Crossheart anymore at this point. It just feels bad. Do you have any other thoughts to that?
Nope, I think the deck is not worth playing.
Okay. Minerva Loop. Minerva Loop is going into the BT10 format was predicted to be one of the strongest decks in the format. You had a much more linear line of play, but damn was it a strong line of play, being the Cerberus combo with Revival from the Dark. And it was also a really good Crossheart matchup. Unfortunately,
I didn't get any result though.
it got 2 tops in Latin America. I think we've had, 2 major tournaments so far across the globe? Maybe 3 from EU. And it got 2 in Latin America, 0 from North America, and I don't know how it did in Europe. I think the biggest thing that contributed to the downfall of Minerva was, one, Jesmon being a lot better, or a lot more popular than predicted. Jesmon was an absolutely terrible matchup for Minerva, but also just how the underperformance of Crossheart, right? Crossheart performed nowhere nearly as well as we predicted it to be. Nowhere where anyone predicted it, right? I think everyone predicted Crossheart to be in like the top dog territory.
Yeah, it matched up into BT9 decks. It's also not that great.
No, it's very poor matchups into BT9 decks as well. The way the meta panned out was very poor for Minerva, and going into EX3, I think it just continues to get worse. Bloom Lord, Blue Flare are 2 decks that you just don't want to play against in general. I see a lot of players say that they can skill gap Blue Flare, but I still am a believer to this day that on average it's not a favorable matchup for the Minerva player. Sorai especially does not help the matchup, making it so you can no longer swing your werewolf modes.
I think Sorai just kills your matchup.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. I don't see how you outskill Sorai.
I don't either. You never 1v1 Exa. Examon will always beat you. And Examon will double block the Cerberus as well. Bloom Lord getting Pomulon access as well as being able to bot deck any of your on deletions, including your Minerva, feels terrible. Yeah, just in general, I feel like this is unironically now a tier 3 deck because of the new decks introduced from EX3, as well as just how the rest of the meta panned out.
Yeah, links can also deny you from looping, right?
Yeah, Links denies you from looping as well. Dark Diamond X.
It's tier 3. It didn't get any better. It didn't get any worse. It is what it is.
No.
You can argue it got worse because it no longer has Crossheart. Because you can argue Crossheart was one of its better matchup because you can just keep popping the Taiki.
Yeah.
But now that the most tamer reliant deck in the meta is gone, you can argue that it got quite a bit worse.
And then we look at it, Hydra bot deck, right? I feel like Bloom Lord genuinely is like it dictates whether you are a tier 1 deck or you're a tier 3 deck, right? But I think having such a bad matchup into Bloom Lord probably hurts you a lot. I think this is a tier 3 deck. I agree. Not having security rookies still to this day is also going to severely hurt you.
Yeah, BT12 baby, supposedly.
Whoa. Okay. Blue Flare. Blue Flare is arguably the most controversial deck in the BT10 format. Blue Flare performed very well in Latin America. It did not perform in North America yet. Again, it's been like a total of 2 or 3 events across the globe, so anything can happen at this point.
I think over, like we mentioned result, but realistically, take it with a grain of salt. It's only a few event. Like it's really not enough sample size.
No, it's a very small sample size. And I think the biggest thing though is that Blue Flare has been awaiting Sorai. So for those of you that don't know, Sorai is a new option that Blue gets in EX3. Sorai is 4 cost, trash the top 4 cards of your opponent's stack. All of your opponent's Digimon with no sources cannot attack until their turn ends.
This is the card that killed Minerva Loop because you can no longer surface off of your play.
You can no longer Cerberus Loop. You strip any of the BT9 decks. You strip their primary sources. So you strip more Garurumon promo.
You strip from the top. Strip from the top, which is very important.
Yeah, very, very important.
Because this usually takes away the best sources for BT9 decks. So a lot of times what happened is sometimes Melga will swing into Blue Flare, and they'll hit a Sorai, and it'll strip away their security check, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
I think that matchup's still not great for you on average, but Sorai is a very powerful card.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Melga still beats you on average, but if you hit the Sorai, it probably feels a lot better. If you could use it against armors, for example, and you ship their Magnamon, they can no longer purge down into it, which feels pretty bad for them, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Or just...
It's excellent into Bloomlore.
Yep.
It's excellent into Jesmon. Very powerful.
Yeah, it's just Sorai is such a strong card. No reason not to play that card at 3 or 4. But in general, I feel like Blue Flare's matchup spread did get a bit better as well going into EX3. You have a great matchup to Bloom Lord. You do very well into Examon, who's likely to be a popular deck. And Sorai gives you an answer to a lot of these go tall decks. I feel like Blue Flare is now I think you make the argument, right? It's within the tier 1 threat territory, right?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of I think there's a lot of merits to the deck being tier 1. I think having good matchup into Bloomlore give you a lot of credit, just give you a lot of credibility as a deck, right?
Now there is the chance that they just Hydramon bot deck your stack, and then you don't get any of your cards back. And yeah, that does suck, right? But on average, I feel like being able to stun out the Bloom Lord board and just making it so you force them to have their own form of self-tap to even resolve Hydramon to begin with, I think is really strong, right? You force them to have to rely on cards like Agitar, Sunflow, Samadhi, and Digisorption, right?
The matchup is miserable, dude. It feels so bad to play.
Is it? I see a lot of people saying that it's not too bad because you Hydra bot deck, but like it.
You can, but I think it makes your game plan really difficult as a Bloom Lord player.
Yeah, it forces you to be a lot more careful with your resources.
And I think people overestimate how much Blue Flare care about losing one stack.
Yeah.
It's not like Crossheart where losing one stack you lose like 4 to 5.
No, you're losing
pieces, right?
You're losing like 2 or 3, right?
2. Yeah, and they have the ability, the deck can draw enough to where it start to recover from that position, right?
Right. But yeah, so I think in general, Blue Flare feels like a pretty solid tier 1 deck. I know people like Primitive and Mario are going to say otherwise. Maybe Sorai changes their mind. Who knows? But I think in the BT10 iteration, I do think it is a pretty solid 1.5 deck. Make an argument for tier 2 if you want because the BT9 decks.
You have a fantastic security control matchup, which I think is pretty important in America, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because you randomly, doesn't matter what event you go into, you're gonna randomly run into like one security control player. It always happens. And I think Blue Flare having great matchup into that is really good.
Right.
The only issue now is that I think your matchup into Melga is pretty problematic.
Yeah.
If the Melga player opened well, I think the matchup is really difficult.
All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on Bloom Flare. Maybe we'll cover it in a different video on a different time. But Bloom Lord, finally, we got around to it. This deck comes up a lot. I feel like we said before, a lot of the metagame is centralized around Bloom Lord, just because it answers most things in general. Like it is probably the most toolbox deck in the format, right? I think. I don't know if you disagree with me on that, but it feels like it has access. Like it has pressure, it has draw power, it has stun, it has removal, it has like so many like tools. Like
if you haven't played into Bloomlore, I don't think you recognize how scary this deck can be.
It's terrifying,
especially in EX3. Bloomlore is one of those decks where you leave one body on board and you have like 4 security and you think you're fine, and they'll kill you.
Yeah.
Like one HPD is all it takes for them to murder you from 4 security.
HPD is busted. HPD should not be allowed. HPD should be illegal with this iteration of Bloom Lord. Actually, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I think Bloom Lord. I don't know if it's best deck in the format. I think it's like I think it's in contention with Melga for sure.
I think your Melga matchup. That's a hard matchup for me to judge.
Yeah.
Because Melga can definitely run you down, but
Right.
Hydra is also an excellent answer to Melga.
Not to mention like Cherrymon, right? Being able to like forcibly like redirect them. So not only do you redirect them, but you also steal their memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in general, it's hard for me to say whether Melga or Bloom Lord is the better deck in the format, but
I think Melga might.
I think it's Melga.
I think Melga has better matchup spread into the rest of the meta. Bloom Lore matchup into Blue Flare, I think, is pretty difficult, and ironically, I think your Gallant matchup is quite difficult.
Yeah,
I've tested Gallant into this deck a lot, and you can clear the board fairly easily because a lot of times what happens is you get a ton of memory off of a Warground X play, which then allow you to go into like Gallant X, and even like either Crimson Mo, Omni X, and so on. So not only are you clearing the board, you're putting a ton of card in the trash, and then you're also burning multiple security at that time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I do agree. I think Melga is probably the best deck in the format, but Bloom Lord is, I feel like, definitively the second best deck in the format. And then Gamamon. I'm gonna let the dude who owns 4 Altarts talk about this one. It's not me. I'm broke, guys.
I think Gamamon is a really fun deck. Gamma Rush is pretty interesting in that you don't really need a ton of setup, right? If you hit your hero, a lot of time you're swinging and you're checking 2 security right away with your level 5. So it's great in that sense. It does get a pretty significant buff in this set in Dorpigmon, and can you bring up Dorpigmon for the people?
Yeah. I think the biggest issue I have with this deck is like, yes, it's like a super strong like aggro deck, and like sometimes you just run your opponent down into the ground, and then sometimes you just don't. Like you don't have a lot of flexibility, right?
Yeah, sometimes you're missing a specific piece and you just don't do anything. Dorkmon's a new card though. You should show everyone what it does.
Yeah. One sec. Okay, so here we are with the new Dorbrick. It is 4 cost Evo. It has Rush. And on play, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. For every Digivolution card with a trait with Dragon Sword or I don't even know how to pronounce that, but
Ceratopians. Ceratopsian.
Oh god.
It's like Triceratops.
Okay,
basically.
I see. Add 2000 to the DP you can pop, and then it has Digicross. 5 Digimon with different names and traits containing Dragon, Saur, and Ceratopsian.
Okay, so the core interaction between this card and could you bring up Candle Weiss?
Yeah, I got you, bro.
One N.
Oh, is it 1 N? Okay.
Yeah. So if you guys didn't know, Kenna Weissman is the level 5 for Gamamon. And the cool thing about this card is that if you look at the ESS, it gives all of its effect to whatever Digimon is under, right? So you gain every effect of all your Gamamon. So as you know, there is Betel Gamamon, which has Blitz, and you also have Unblockable and Piercing. Now, the cool thing about Dorbic is that you can tuck all of these cards under it to do a crossplay, and Candle Weiss will give the inherit from these cards to it. So that means you can play a level 6 with Rush and Blitz, meaning that your Dorbic is able to swing even if you go over your memory threshold.
Yeah.
It's very cool. The only downside to that is that Dorbic says everything needs to have different name. So you can only choose one of your Gamamons instead of having multiple Gamamons. So that's a little awkward in that sense. So sometimes you're missing pieces because of it.
Right.
But overall, it's a very nice addition to the deck. Use it as a finisher. A lot of times you can use this as like a tempo play because of the deletion effect. So you can do something like play Dormic, delete something, get Blitz, have the Gamamon that let you swing into a body, etc. But anyway, yeah, not to go on too much about this deck. It's a very fun deck, but I think overall it's probably tier 2.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right. I don't think it's better than any of these decks, but I digress. And then
Until we get the level 6 Gamamon.
True. Soon. Serious Gamma. The Hina Lynx. Okay, Hina Lynx is it's actually a really cool deck. It's like actually a super insane deck. I say insane in the sense that like its playstyle is really insane. Being the fact that you trigger on plays on Digivolve, and having the ability to shut down your opponent from de-Digivolving. I'll show that on screen really quick.
It's very unique.
Yeah, it's super unique actually. Where R4 though?
It's right there.
Oh, there it is.
Metallic.
Yeah, so on play, Digivolve one of all your opponent's Digimon, then delete one of your opponent's Digimon that costs 5 or less. If no Digimon was deleted, all of your opponent's unsuspended Digimon cannot Digivolve until the end of your opponent's turn. So, one of the biggest things about Lynx is your cross-art matchup is very bad because they never actually Digivolve. They would always, on play and then get rushed and then all that stuff. So that was a really bad matchup for you. But with Crossheart now out of the meta, I feel a lot better to play this deck. Although the biggest issue is X Antibody as an option existing, because that means that they can swing and then Digivolve while suspended, which then bypasses Metallic Drapon's effect entirely. So womp womp womp. Feels pretty bad. And
do you think it's good enough to be 1.5?
I do not, unfortunately. I think having the niche where you force Jagras decks like Exomon to have both pieces unsuspended is pretty cool. I think being unable to stop the X Antibody option, however, or just in general Digimon that are suspended, feels kind of bad. And for a lot of these decks, I don't think it's asking a lot for them to find these options, as well as your opponent just being able to play off of the raising area as well.
Yeah, not to mention Bloomlord can play around.
Right, yeah, because you have cards like Digisorption, or not
Agitar.
Agitar, right? Not Digisorption. You actually can't Digisorb under that effect because you can't start the trigger. But you have cards like Agitar, like Samadhi, right? So you have a lot of outs via that. So I do think this is a tier 2 deck. Unfortunately, I think it's a pretty solid tier 2 deck. I just don't.
I think it's a tier 2 deck that can potentially shut down all the other tier 2 decks.
Yeah. I think if the X Antibody option didn't exist, I think it would be in a lot better position in the meta. It's just unfortunate that it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then D Brigade. So D Brigade actually does receive a lot of nice support in the EX3 set. It did receive an entirely new line, including a new Dark Dramon. Tank Dramon gives you the ability to get out a lot more bodies. It is a really good Bloomlord matchup, in my opinion. Being able to not only have an insane security bombs in your deck, but just in general, you have a lot of low-to-the-ground early aggression that you can force the Bloomlord player into have the nuts or you lose. I think the biggest strength of the D Brigade deck is the fact that it has a very compact engine, which then means you could fit so many security bombs into the deck. And cards like Ultimate Flare, cards like Iron Fisted Onslaught, Infinity Cannon, etc. These are all like really potent cards. And the deck in general is just very sticky and aggressive. Time and time again, people have rated D Brigade to not be very good, but D Brigade has, again, time and time again, proven to be actually pretty solid.
It just randomly tops. It always has like one top.
It got 2 in the BT10 format so far, if I remember correctly, actually.
Yeah.
So I refuse to make that mistake again. This is a 1.5 deck.
Okay. Fair enough.
I will never get baited by that shit again. I refuse.
I think being fast and just swinging give you a lot of. It's just a lot of merits, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes just the game is at a point where sometimes if you're fast enough, it doesn't matter how bad your matchups are. You just win before your opponent can get to that piece.
Right. And then coming up next, we do have Fish. Fish being the Plesio, Aegis Dramon kind of support. So this was actually a really cool deck. One of the biggest niches that the deck did have was as a sort of pseudo answer to Crossheart, because whenever they would play, a Cross 4, you could play a Digimon from your source, and then you would immediately bounce their Cross 4, and that was pretty cool. Cross 4 no longer being in the meta does hurt the deck a little bit, and then the existence of Pomumon also hurts the deck a lot, because then you can't get off your summon from source, right? So. Yeah. That does feel pretty bad, and just in general, it feels like a worse Bloomlord in almost every single way, shape, and form.
You're also not great into single stack decks.
You're not. Yeah, you're really not, because they're not going to play anything that would trigger your effect, so you're not likely to get off value. I feel like just in general, it's a really cool deck. Aesthetically and playstyle-wise, it's very cool. I just don't think it's very It's gonna. I don't think it's gonna be very good.
The funny thing is, the one deck that you do activate your effect into now is Blue Flare, which beats you.
Yeah. So Blue Flare can stun you out. Sorai is a huge problem for your deck. Sorai strip your source, and then you're just like, huh?
Can't play anything.
Summon that nothing? Question mark. All right, Chaos Dramon or Machine Dramon, right? This for me personally is a really difficult deck for me to rate, because the top end is good, right? I think it's very hard to disagree with that notion. The top end is very good. You have Machine Dramon, who is immune to most forms of destruction. You have Chaos Dramon, who's immune to bounce bot deck as well. In general, the deck, in theory, should be very good. The issue with the deck, however, is your bottom end is very poor. You have a very weak low end. You can be really slow and clunky at times. I don't know. It's just I want the deck to be good. It just doesn't feel like it has the tools to be good.
This is the deck that get one card support every set.
Yeah, like it always gets support, but it's just never enough to push it, right? Like you can even argue Chaos Dramon X in BT11 is a bit win more, right? It doesn't actually solve any of the problems the deck has. The deck needs a better bottom end.
You mean BT12?
Yeah, 12. My bad.
11 is new machine.
It's new Machine Dramon and analog band. You're right. BT12. So I think just given the fact that you have such slow time to start up, maybe that's the entire point of the deck. Actually, wait, it's like an actual old computer. Maybe the entire intention is just to be slow to set up, slow to start up. Huh.
But then the win con's not good enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to say it's a tier 2 deck, but like the more I like talk about it out loud, the more it feels like a tier 3 deck. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't have a strong opinion on it. Every time I try to play this deck is bricks. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll get a bottom end that actually like justifies playing this deck, but until then, I just don't feel it. Like I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
And then 4 Great Dragons. You have a lot more experience playing this deck than I do. What do you think?
Let's just get out of the way. It's tier 3.
Okay, good talk.
Yeah. It's neat.
Is it? Wait. Is it? Where in tier 3?
is better than the deck that got hits. It's probably better than Fish.
All
And
right.
so the issue with this deck is that your plays are neat and they seem really cool, right? Like, oh man, I'm playing Mega Zoo and I'm slamming my Mega for free. So here's the issue: if you don't see the option, the deck doesn't actually do anything. So sometimes you run into that issue where the option is stuck in your security somewhere, and like you didn't draw the TK in time, or it's stuck at the bottom of the deck, and then the deck just does absolutely nothing, and then you're slamming like overcosted level 6, right? The other issue is that it's very reliant on your stack without protection to survive, because you actually really need that stack alive in order to like get your rush and get all your plays off. Uh, so sometimes if that stack gets killed, you don't have any plays for a turn. It just feels really bad. So it's just very fragile. He's tested into me a lot with it, and on average, it just felt very very tier 3.
That's fair. Yeah, that's very fair. I know there's some like haha funny Mastodon 4 grade dragon you can also do, but I don't think it's anything more than like a haha funny meme.
Yeah, and there's also like a security control version where
Yeah,
you try to play like half Mega Zoo, half security control. It's neat.
right.
I don't know if there's any real merits to it.
And then finally the secret rares of the EX3 set, and oh my god, finally the almost the end of this video. Get me out. I'm hungry. Examon. Examon is one of the hyped up decks of the set. It is it's unironically a defensive deck that doesn't rely on having security. So defensive decks in Digimon are not very common. I would say a lot of them feel more tempo eccentric or aggro eccentric, and then you have control decks like security control and such like that. And that's fine and dandy and everything, but it's nice to have a change of pace with Examon being like a breath of fresh air in the sense that like it gives you control, it gives you defense in the form of combat rather than blowing them up with options, right? So Examon in theory has a really great matchup to a lot of the BT9 stack decks because they bring out of raising, you can immediately smack them, and it feels pretty bad for them on average. However, the issue with Examon is that you have a not so great Bloomlord matchup because Hydramon can bot deck you, or Granda Soul will just absolutely send you. And Blue Flare is pretty bad too because it will strip you out, and then Sorai is a really huge issue. But you do really well into Grandis. I think your Melga matchup is kind of scuffed because they can bounce you and such, and then they also have battle protection.
It takes a lot. They can deal with it, but it does require Melga to see all of their pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, like it will require Melga to see like the Melga X into like the Omni X or something like that.
Right. So
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, right?
I think the thing you can say about Exa is that if you see your full line
Yeah.
and you get the X out, pretty early, like turn 3-4, you actually have a fantastic matchup into the majority of decks in the meta,
Right.
with the exception of like 2 or 3.
Right. I agree. If you get Examon early as turn 2 or turn 3, you're probably beating most decks. The issue, though, is that sometimes Examon can be very bricky. It plays very similarly to Mastemon, which is why Hayes likes it so much. Freaking Mastemon enthusiasts.
Level 5.
I love slamming fives. Brr. Yeah, it's just sometimes you don't find the Examon, or sometimes you just don't find the component to Jogress, and then the deck like falls flat on its face. Like at that point, you're just relying on Slayer Dramon to carry you. I think because of consistency issues, as well as having bad matchups into Bloom Lord as well as Blue Flare, I do think this is like a tier 1.5 deck.
I think it's a pretty good 1.5.
I think it is a pretty good 1.5 deck. I think the only 1.5 that is better than you is probably Grandis, TBH.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then the last deck on the tier list. And you may all be wondering, Hoang, why did you put Lotus Casino? Well, for one, we originally wanted to put Casino, and I'm a nerd, so I put Lotus, even though it has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to this. I just Percy Jackson, yeehaw, dude. But yes, Imperial. This deck is the Lotus Casino tier. So the reason why is because on paper, it sounds good, right? Like having the ability to combo off like crazy. Your opponent cannot react in the security. You swing for like 17k. You swing for all their security. You have you have recursion. Like on paper, it sounds really good, right? But Haha. Little did they realize by giving the two of the arguably most inconsistent colors in the game and fusing them together, you get a very inconsistent deck.
I don't think purple is that inconsistent.
Okay.
Okay.
It's an.
You have a lot of deck. The issue is this deck is like start counting the pieces you need. You need both of your level 4s.
Yeah.
You need both of your level 5. You need two of your level 6, and then you need like a rookie. So it's like a 7-piece combo that unless you see the whole thing, you don't actually do anything.
Yeah. And then not to mention, some of the pieces have to be in the trash. So you need prior trash setup as well.
Yeah, so this deck can I've seen Tesla play this deck a lot.
Yeah. Same.
And sometimes he's digging through like 30 cards to find one piece, even though he has the full line, everything ready to go.
Right.
So it's either this deck, if you see everything, it's like tier 1. It's fantastic. It's like you move out, your Imperial Digimon is swinging, clearing board, checking for security, and your opponent is like not getting the security effect, not even tamers, it's just denying everything. Fantastic. And then sometimes you sit there and do nothing for like 6 turns because you can't find like a specific level 4.
Now also, Pomumon stops you dead in your tracks, right? Pomumon hard stops you.
Well, you can always slam a level 7 and Jogress that way.
Okay, I guess if you want to go...
sorry, a 7 cost level 5, not
yeah. I guess if you want to go the roundabout way, and, pass them over enough memory to just clap you back, but, like, I digress.
It's fine.
And then
you just click board.
You also lose to Examon. You, like, unironically hard lose to Examon because you can never get over, on average at least, you never get over Examon. You trade, and then they decoy out.
Your control matchup is fantastic, though.
Yeah, you destroy control. Like good stuff. You beat Sekon and you beat Maste. Like, woohoo!
Yeah, like you just sit there, and security control can get like 8 security. It won't matter.
But yeah, like on average, if you see all your pieces, the deck feels pretty good. The realistic, real, world scenario is that you're probably not going to do that. The deck is probably going to brick, and you're just going to struggle into most things. So it is the casino deck of the format.
I wonder if this deck will get more support, and what kind of support can it get to make the playstyle feels better.
Yeah, I have no clue how you would what you would add to this deck to make it any better. I guess some form of just consistency. But
yeah, outside of being able to tutor a very specific piece from your deck.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, that's the EX3 tier list. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I think EX3 is a fantastic format, and I was looking forward to this format, especially when we were playing BT10 format, in the Japanese BT10 format. Granted, I think our BT10 ended up being much more healthy than the Japanese BT10 format, with Crossheart not dominating everything. But yeah, EX3 fantastic set. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think the real cool thing about Digimon is that we have stuff in tier 2, right? And obviously the stuff in tier 1 and 1.5 is meta competitive, but the stuff in tier 2 can top events. I think we're getting to a point where in Digimon especially, even bad matchups are very winnable if your opponent breaks a little, because on average deck power level are pretty high, and just seeing all your pieces before your opponent is good enough for your deck to win. So I think that's the cool thing about Digimon right now. It's just that even when playing a lower tier deck, it's very possible to win.
Yeah, I do agree. EX3 is probably one of the more exciting sets that I'm looking forward to. I am very much so a Hydramon enthusiast, cannot front. And I'm very, very excited to play Examon. I put a lot of time into Examon, unironically. I don't know why I did, but I did. But nonetheless, I look forward to this format. We get it in 1 week, and yeah, I have nothing else to say. If you're watching this video and you're going to be in Dallas this weekend, both Zero and I will actually be there. And please feel free to come up and say hi or take photos or whatever, right?
Yep.
Okay, but yeah, so thanks for watching, everyone, and take it easy.
Yep, bye.